My dear brother, my dear sister, imagine waking up in just 3 days and feeling that something inside your home has completely changed, as if a heavy, invisible weight that has been pressing on your chest for months or even years has finally disappeared. That deep sense of relief, that real peace in your heart, is what so many people are searching for without realizing that the answer may already be sitting in something so simple, something you already have in your kitchen right now. Yes, right there in a place you see every single day without paying attention to it. But don't rush ahead, because what you are about to hear is not just another spiritual idea. It is an ancient secret that has protected and sustained a people for more than 3,000 years, even through their darkest and most difficult moments in history. Stay with me, because this is not a random teaching or a simple household ritual. This is something deeper, something that carries the idea of an ancient covenant that can still be activated inside your own home today. And by the time you finish this first part, you will feel a growing urgency to understand and apply it. Take a moment and think about your daily life. You work, you struggle, you wake up early, you do everything you can to support your family, and yet it often feels like something unseen is holding you back. Bills keep piling up, opportunities seem to slip away at the very last moment, and peace inside the home is easily disturbed by tension and conflict that you cannot fully explain. It feels as if there is an invisible barrier placed right at the entrance of your life, blocking the flow of everything good. And what is even more striking is that this idea of invisible barriers is not new. From the times of the ancient temple in Jerusalem, spiritual teachers understood that unseen forces can influence everyday reality in powerful ways. That is why, throughout history, even after exile, persecution, and constant displacement, certain communities continued to rise again and again, rebuilding their lives and finding prosperity once more. Behind all of this, there was a hidden principle, a secret carried quietly through generations, preserved within their homes. And now, in some way, that same knowledge is reaching you. It is not by accident that you are hearing this. You are here because something within you is ready for change, ready to turn your home into a space of peace, stability, and blessing. But before we go deeper, let us do something together. Say these words out loud, wherever you are, with real intention in your heart. My home is a sacred temple, and blessing enters through my doors. Feel every word as you say it. And after you say it, write that same sentence in the comments. This is not just an exercise, it is an act of intention. Because what you declare with awareness begins to take shape in your reality. Now we move to the core of this teaching. For more than 3,000 years, a very simple element has held deep meaning in ancient spiritual tradition: salt. In the sacred texts, it is written that every offering had to include salt as a sign of an eternal covenant. It was never optional or symbolic in a casual sense. It was a direct instruction. But why salt and not oil, wine, or incense? Because salt has a unique quality that sets it apart. It does not easily decay, it does not lose its essence over time, and it remains stable even after many years. Because of this, it became a symbol of something unbreakable, a covenant that represents stability, continuity, and loyalty, a reminder of a promise that does not expire. And when you understand this, you start to see that this symbol is not just historical, but deeply relevant to your life today. The idea of something that remains unchanged even when everything around it shifts becomes powerful, especially when your own life feels unstable or uncertain. This is where the teaching begins to connect with your reality. And from here, you will start to see how simple, conscious actions inside your home can begin to shift the atmosphere, bringing a sense of balance, clarity, and direction back into your everyday life. There is something even more fascinating hidden within this idea of salt that most people never realize. In fact, its meaning goes far beyond symbolism and enters into history, language, and even how people once understood value itself. In ancient Rome, soldiers were often paid in salt or given allowances tied to it, because salt was not just a seasoning, it was a necessity for survival. It preserved food, protected health, and carried real economic value. In many ways, it was treated as seriously as gold in certain periods of history. This is also where an interesting connection appears in language. The word salary is believed to have historical roots connected to salt, reflecting how valuable it once was in daily life. When something is tied to survival, it naturally becomes a form of wealth and stability. So when you bring salt into your home with awareness, you are not just placing a physical substance in a corner, you are connecting with an ancient idea of value, preservation, and lasting provision. It represents something that does not fade quickly, something that is meant to endure. But the teaching goes even deeper when we look at mystical tradition. In Kabbalistic thought, every physical element reflects a deeper spiritual structure. Salt is associated with a specific force linked to strength, limitation, and protection. This force is understood as the ability to set boundaries, to stop negativity, and to prevent imbalance from spreading. In simple terms, it represents the energy that says this far and no further to destructive influences such as scarcity, envy, or internal blockages. When you begin to understand this concept, you start to see your home differently. It is no longer just a physical space where you eat and sleep. It becomes a structure with layers of meaning where different areas reflect different spiritual principles. According to this teaching, your home can be seen as a map of deeper order, where specific points correspond to channels of influence in your life. And this is where the practice begins to take shape in a very practical way. Because there are three specific locations inside the home where salt is placed, each one representing a different function in this system of flow and stability. Each placement is meant to interact with a different layer of your life experience, especially around what enters, what stays, and how it is preserved. The first of these locations is the entrance of your home. This is more than just a door. It is the point where the outside world meets your private space. Everything that comes into your life symbolically passes through here first. Money, opportunities, relationships, and experiences all enter through this threshold in a symbolic sense. When you place salt here consciously, you are defining a filter, something that influences what is allowed to come in and what is not. But before we go into the second and third locations, there is something important you need to understand. The effectiveness of this practice is not only about placement, but about intention. Without clarity of mind and purpose, even meaningful actions lose their depth. Two people can do the exact same thing in the same way, but their results can be completely different. One does it mechanically, without belief, and the other does it with full conviction, as if they are activating something real and established. That difference in inner certainty changes everything. It is not about emotion or exaggeration, but about focused awareness, the sense that what you are doing is aligned with something deeper and meaningful. So as we continue, remember this clearly. The external action is simple, but the inner state determines its impact. And now, with that understanding in place, we move closer to the next part of this process, where the idea of flow and stability becomes even more direct and personal. Now we go deeper into the structure of this teaching, because the second placement inside the home is where many people begin to understand why some things enter their life but never seem to stay. After the entrance of the home, there is another key location that holds a completely different function. This is not about what comes in anymore, but about what remains, what stabilizes, and what begins to grow once it has entered your life. In many homes, people experience a pattern where money arrives but quickly disappears, opportunities come but do not develop, and progress feels temporary instead of lasting. According to this perspective, that pattern is not random. It reflects a lack of grounding, a weakness in the structure that holds things in place. This is where the second placement becomes important. Inside your main living space, you look for the farthest corner in diagonal alignment from the entrance. It is the point that feels most distant from where everything enters. This location is understood as the foundation point, the place where energy settles after it enters the home. Instead of remaining in motion or leaving too quickly, it is meant to anchor and stabilize. When salt is placed here with awareness, it represents the idea of retention, of holding what is already coming into your life. It is not about attracting anymore, but about preserving and strengthening what has already arrived. In practical terms, this reflects a shift in life patterns. Instead of constantly receiving and losing, the focus becomes receiving and sustaining. Instead of cycles of instability, the emphasis moves toward continuity. But again, the teaching is clear that physical placement alone is not enough. What matters just as much is the internal state while doing it. Without intention, without clarity, the act becomes empty and symbolic rather than transformative in meaning. This is why the mindset during this process is emphasized so strongly. It is not a casual action. It is approached as a deliberate alignment, a conscious declaration that your home is being reordered in structure and flow. At this stage, you begin to understand that the home is being treated like a system of flow. One point controls entry, another controls stability, and together they create balance between movement and grounding. And when this balance is missing in daily life, it often shows up as stress, unpredictability, and frustration. But when it is symbolically restored, the experience of life inside the home begins to feel more steady and less chaotic. Now we move closer to the third placement, which is even more personal and directly connected to your rest, your mind, and your internal state. This is where the teaching becomes not just about your environment, but about you at the deepest level of your daily experience. Now we arrive at the third and most personal placement inside the home, the one that directly connects to your rest, your mind, and your inner state. Unlike the previous 2 points, this one is not about what enters your life or what stays in it, but about what protects you when you are at your most vulnerable. This placement is connected to your bedroom, the space where your body rests and your awareness weakens into sleep. It is during sleep that you are no longer actively controlling your surroundings, which is why, in this teaching, it is considered a critical moment for protection and renewal. The instruction is simple. Place the third portion of salt beneath your bed, specifically under the side where your head rests. This is not done randomly, but with the idea that your most sensitive point of rest is being symbolically covered and guarded. When you do this, the act is understood as creating a form of boundary around your night. It represents protection during a state where your conscious control is reduced and your mind becomes more open and receptive. In this perspective, sleep is not just physical rest. It is also a time when the mind and spirit are deeply active in ways that are not always visible. This is why the placement is treated with seriousness and intention. As you place it, you are encouraged to speak words of protection and stability over your space, not as a ritual for spectacle, but as a focused declaration of safety, peace, and restoration within your home. Once all 3 placements are completed, the teaching emphasizes leaving them undisturbed for a period of 72 hours. This is considered a complete cycle, a full period in which change is allowed to take effect without interruption. During this time, people are encouraged to observe subtle changes rather than dramatic ones. The atmosphere of the home may feel lighter, sleep may become deeper, and emotional tension may slowly begin to reduce. These changes are not presented as sudden miracles, but as gradual shifts in perception, mood, and daily experience. Small signs are considered important indicators that something in the environment is adjusting. As the hours progress, attention is drawn to everyday coincidences, unexpected messages, conversations that arrive at the right moment, or small developments that seem unusually timely. These are interpreted as early signs of movement in one's life circumstances. The final stage of this cycle is where tangible outcomes are expected to appear more clearly, not instant transformation, but visible shifts that suggest progress has begun in areas that previously felt stuck or delayed. After the 72-hour period, the salt is respectfully removed and disposed of with gratitude, symbolizing closure of the cycle and acknowledgement of completion. This part of the teaching reinforces that the process is not meant to be ongoing forever in the same form. It is a structured cycle with a beginning, a middle, and an end, designed to bring awareness to how intention and environment interact over time. Now, as we move into the final part, the focus shifts toward understanding common mistakes, deeper meanings, and how mindset and daily action determine whether this experience becomes meaningful or remains ineffective. Now that the full process has been explained, there is an important layer that most people overlook, and it is often the reason why results differ so dramatically from one person to another. The first major mistake is performing the entire practice without real inner conviction. If it is done casually, with doubt, hesitation, or a mindset of let's just see what happens, then the depth of the practice is significantly reduced. The external action may still be the same, but the internal alignment is missing. The teaching here is clear. The effectiveness is tied to intention. When something is done with full awareness and certainty, it carries a completely different weight than when it is done mechanically. It is not about emotional intensity, but about focused clarity and seriousness of purpose. The second mistake is interrupting the process too early. Moving or disturbing the salt before the full 72 hours breaks the continuity of the cycle. In this framework, timing is part of structure, and structure is part of meaning. When the cycle is interrupted, the process loses its coherence. This is why patience is emphasized. The idea is to allow the full period to unfold without interference, so that whatever is shifting internally and externally has space to stabilize and complete its movement. The third mistake is misunderstanding the role of action after the practice. This is not a passive system where everything changes without effort. Instead, it is described as something that clears resistance and opens pathways, but the person still has to move forward in their daily responsibilities. Work, effort, decision making, and persistence still matter. The difference is that obstacles may begin to feel less rigid and opportunities may start to appear more naturally aligned. But action is still required to engage with them. At a deeper level, the teaching reframes the home as more than a physical structure. It is described as a personal sanctuary, a space where intention, awareness, and daily life intersect. In this view, each person carries responsibility for the atmosphere they create within it. This shifts the perspective from being passive inhabitants of a space to being active participants in shaping its energetic and emotional tone. The home becomes a reflection of internal order, discipline, and clarity. As the process concludes, the focus returns to gratitude and awareness. Gratitude is not presented as a formality, but as a way of recognizing progress, even when it is subtle or still unfolding. It trains attention toward what is changing rather than what is lacking. Finally, the message ends with a reminder that transformation is gradual. It does not always arrive in dramatic moments, but often through small shifts that accumulate over time until life begins to feel different in a noticeable way. And with that understanding, the entire teaching comes full circle. What began as a simple idea connected to something in your kitchen now becomes a broader reflection on intention, environment, discipline, and how people interpret change in their lives.